Hello everyone. Welcome to the second part of our lecture on speed management. Please allow me to share my screen. The question today is, how can we plan towards safe urban speeds? We already know why speeds are so important in our cities. Now let's see how we can plan to work on that. The first part is we will assess context and land use and update the speeds to match those needs. Do we have school zones, residential neighborhoods, commercial streets, arterial roads? We will decide in particular what are our arterial roads, where we will have high traffic with high volumes and probably with a high density of vulnerable users of the road. This is a graphic that can help you decide, depending on the function that you see for that road, what is the best speed. So if you have, for example, a market where you have a mix of people walking, cyclists, and vehicles going around, you might want to have really low speeds, 10 to 20 kilometers per hour. Schools and health areas, you might want 30 kilometers per hour or lower. If you have a commercial area, you can consider 30 to 40 kilometers per hour. If you have cycling infrastructure, very similar, unless it is segregated, is protected, and then you might want to consider 40 to 50 kilometers per hour. Do you have intersections? Intersections are very critical because a vehicle will only withstand a crash, a lateral crash, at a maximum 50 kilometers per hour. And that is one of the reasons why in cities it's not recommended to have speeds that are higher than 50 kilometers per hour as a speed limit, among other considerations. Finally, do you have roads that are completely segregated from pedestrians and from cyclists? So you might want to consider 60 kilometers per hour there. Second, you will identify areas where speeds need to be controlled and lowered. So if you have high density of vulnerable users of the road, high density of vehicles, wide and straight roads, those arterial roads, or you have complex or poorly designed intersections. This is an example from New York City. This road that you see here is called Queens Boulevard, but for many years, people knew it as the Boulevard of Death. Why? Because since 1990, 186 people have lost their lives in this road. 138 were pedestrians. In the 90s, all what New York City did is alert the citizens with that sign that you see here to let them know that this was a killer road. It was a road designed to be a highway, basically, but it got densified. So you have a lot of people living there, a lot of stores and shops. So people needed to cross the street, needed to use the bike, and it was a deadly combination. The city started to work on this road that will have anything from 20 to 25 fatalities a year. In the 2000s, they decided to change the street. They did it incrementally. This is how it looks today. The lanes are narrower. You have space for pedestrians. They have less vehicle lanes. And so it is more an urban road than a highway road. Since 2014, this road has registered 0 fatalities among pedestrians and cyclists. It is a very encouraging example, one that you, as an architect, engineer, urban planner, can take back to your city. This is also very important to consider. When we talk about the speed management, we want to see the vehicles that are in our cities. What is the speed that they will withstand if they are in a crash? So this is what Volvo commits to do. Volvo is one of the companies, the automobile companies, that really cares about safety, and they said our cars are prepared to withstand a head-on collision at 70 kilometers per hour. That is why in roads that are outside your city, if you allow for speeds to be higher than 70 kilometers per hour, you have to have a physical separation. Otherwise, you will see very severe crashes there. In cities where we have intersections, speed should not be higher than 50 kilometers per hour because the car is simply not prepared to withstand that impact. The same goes for obstacles. 60 kilometers per hour is the maximum that a vehicle will withstand. And when it comes to vulnerable users of the road, pedestrians, cyclists, and motorcyclists, the speeds should not be higher than 30 kilometers per hour if we want to help them survive a crash. Third, identify and study crash locations. Review crash history, identify areas of high crashes, assess in relation to posted and actual speeds. This is a tricky one because not all our cities have really good crash location. By the way, we need to work on that. And also having a speed. What is the speed, a certain timing in our cities? We know perfectly where our speeds will be higher, and those are arterial roads, for example. So if we don't have crash location and speed data, we can try to focus on these roads that we know have high speeds. This is an example from Bogota where they did all these steps. They look at their data and they determine the majority of people killed in traffic crashes were pedestrians, followed by motorcycles, followed by cyclists, and at the end cars. So they created a plan to protect the most vulnerable. You see how we study the fatalities. We created this heat map where you can see clearly how it starts being delineated those streets, those arterial roads where we have a high concentration of fatalities. Then we overlap that with the speed data. The city has Wi-Fi devices that can help us measure the speed on real time. So we overlap speeds that were higher than 50 kilometers per hour, and you can see that there is a complete uh, over position of fatalities and speeds being really high. This is one that is extremely sad, is children in high speeds, which you see again, they overlap very much and is related to school density. So when you have schools, we can just not turn a blind eye on what is happening with these children, but rather we have to help make those school areas, which is not only where the kid crosses the school, but from which neighborhoods they are commuting, they are coming, and make those areas safe. This is one of the most dangerous, if not the most dangerous street, arterial road in Bogota. It's called Avenida Boyacá, with 29 kilometers from north to south. It presented 57 fatalities a year in 2014, plus almost 800 serious injuries. 37 of them were pedestrians, and this situation was just worsening. By 2015, the number of fatalities have increased almost 50%. So the city decided to take action. Some observations. There was priority for motor vehicles. We observed high speeds, heavy vehicles. They are going at 70 kilometers per hour. Lack of pedestrian crossings. You can observe that is already a residential area. And you can see also the park, the path that has been already marked by pedestrians because it's a desire line for crossing the street. Other observations is some of the roads have been built as interurban roads, roads that were outside the city, and that's why they have very wide sections. very wide turning radius. You can see there the yellow vehicle turning without slowing down, because this type of design allows it to not slow down, and you have a cyclist that was coming straight. In a city, you don't want to have this type of designs. You want to make sure that when a car is turning a corner, is slowing down to be able to see who is on the other side. We also observe here high speeds. There was an interesting observation, the difference between the north of this avenue and the south. In the north, which is wealthier, we found that there were pedestrian crossings and signalized intersections. In the south, that is a lot poorer, there was no option for crossing that street safely. The police started to work. They did some checks to make sure cars were not speeding, not going. At that point, the speed limit was 60 kilometers per hour. And with some enforcement, they noticed how the speeds were coming down. The city, with those results, decided to move and to reduce the speeds to 5 arterial roads, and they noticed that in particular for motorcycles and pedestrians, that was a really important impact. So they decided last year in 2020 to make all the city 50 kilometers per hour. That is the speed limit. And then they have neighborhoods that have lower speeds in other areas that have speeds that are safer for everyone. Fourth, create a citywide policy on safe speeds. You know that if you don't have safe speeds in your city, you cannot have a livable city. You cannot have a city that aims for sustainability, that aims to eliminate poverty. So this is a very important topic to position with the community and in the public agenda. This is an example from a city in France called Grenoble. Grenoble is a small city. We talk about it in the first part of this conversation. I like this example very much because it's very simple. All the yellow areas inside are at 30 kilometers per hour. And those are areas where you have schools, where you have public spaces, where you have people going to the offices, where we all are going to be protected because we are in traffic that doesn't go more than 30 kilometers per hour. We also need goods to be delivered. We need bus lanes. And so we have arterial roads that go to 50 kilometers per hour. Those are the ones marked in purple. And finally, outside the city, we have those streets where you don't have pedestrians or cyclists, and vehicles can go 70 kilometers per hour, 90 kilometers per hour if you have the correct separation. This is Bogota. They created a speed management plan that have been following very carefully. Here you have how they have decided on the different roads. So the arterial roads will not go more than 50 kilometers per hour. You have areas where you have cyclists, where you have pedestrians that are at 30 to 40 kilometers per hour, where you have a mix of people no more than 10 or 20 kilometers per hour. Please take a careful look at this slide when you have time. I just want to finish this presentation by giving you some guidance. Once you have speeds that need to be managed, please take into account the recommendations from the World Health Organization. It's very simple, and the first part is building or modifying roads to include features that calm traffic. Establish the appropriate speed according to the function. You have to see who is using that road to determine what is the speed. Enforce the speed. Get support from the police or use technology, speed cameras. Vehicles can also have built-in technologies that allow them to have certain speeds. And finally, work with the community. Raise awareness about the dangers of speeding and how the cities will become better places if we have safe speeds. These are some actions that you can take as an engineer, as architects, as urban planner. If you have streets where speeds are really high, you can work with speed humps. You can put speed cushions. You can do chicanes. They help slow down because they get the attention of the driver on the road. This is an example, a real example in the city of Bogota, where they created this slow speed zone neighborhood. You can do curve extensions. You can raise crossings, raise the pedestrian crossings, and so the vehicle feels they are invited to the pedestrian zone, and there, and thus they have to go slowly. With that, I want to thank you for your attention. I want to thank you because you are working on making your city safer. You are working in a very critical topic, which is making streets safer for all. I wish you well. Thank you.